Hello and welcome to In Conservation, the podcast of the Wildlife Trust for Bedfordshire, Cambridgeshire and Northamptonshire. My name is Sophie Baker and I'm the editor of our members magazine Local Wildlife and host of the podcast. Today's episode, in celebration of Dawn Chorus Day on the 4th of May, is all about that early morning cacophony of resident and migrating birds. At the end of April, on a rather grey, early, but not technically dawn morning, I met up with my colleague Nathan for an almost dawn walk through our local nature reserve to listen to the songsters. Come along with us and see what we discovered, and find out how best to enjoy the spectacle for yourself this weekend, even if you can't face a 5 a.m. wake-up call.
Good morning.
It's an early morning, not as early as it could be for a bird walk.
True.
But it's nice to see you, and we're here at Paxton Pits, which is my and your local nature reserve, which is that fair to say?
Yeah, I think it is. I think I'm probably just about between Begwary Brook and Paxton Pits. So yeah, this is my preferred local nature reserve, shall we say.
Yeah, and it's an early morning. I've seen a few dog walkers, so we're not super early this morning, but the birds are still singing, and we're here to listen to some birdsong and see what we can hear. It is a particularly good reserve for that because it's got quite a mix of habitats, doesn't it?
Yeah, lots of lakes, a little bit of river side as well, lots of scrub, some forest areas, plenty of good habitat here for lots of lovely songbirds.
And I think I can hear something. Sedge warbler? In the bushes here, is that right?
Yes, just over the other side, I think, on the edge of the lake. That is sedge warbler in the distance. Good ears.
Yeah, so I have to make a confession, I am not an expert, but I love dawn choruses, and so I have been on a lot of dawn chorus walks in my time. It's just such an amazing thing to do. I always regret it the night before when I decided that I'd signed up to one. I always regret it the night before, but...
So do I. I think so do most people. It's a strange hobby to take up when you don't like early mornings, but yeah, it's definitely the best time to hear them.
It is, yeah. And why is that?
Well, I think it's when they're most active in terms of trying to attract a mate. It's a bit cooler in the day, so they use less energy. They've rested overnight, so they're full of beans in the morning, if you like, ready to go and start the day strong. So I think that early mornings give the birds an opportunity to shout about what they want to achieve that day, whether it's, protect their territory or attract a mate. So yeah, it's a great time to be out listening to them.
Yeah, and obviously a dawn chorus walk, you do actually get up with the dawn. And the reason for that, I think, is because you tend to hear them pipe up sort of individually, don't you? So they're kind of easier to pick out. You get the early singers and then...
Absolutely. You get a little bit of a slow wave, if you like, with the first one starting. Even before the sun's up, you actually have them out, singing in the dark. And then as the morning draws on, you get more and more birds joining in. So as you say, it's a little bit easier sometimes to pick out the first few. It's the kind of reason why I tell anyone that's wanting to get into birding or listening to the dawn chorus that it's easy to start earlier in the season when there's less things singing. So as the season progresses, as you go through the year and you get into kind of your May and June, more and more birds are arriving, more and more birds are singing. It becomes quite the cacophony, if you like, and quite difficult to pick out individual things. So if you start early on in, say, March, when there's only 5 or 6 different species singing, it's much easier to get the hang of which ones are doing that, and you can start to learn the calls a lot easier.
Yeah, that's a really good tip because it can sound like a cacophony, and I think as well, for the uninitiated, like a lot of the birds that you hear in spring sound, you just sort of think they start singing in spring. You don't sort of realise that they're not actually here before then, if that makes sense. That that things like chiff-chaffs and this is just sort of the epitome of spring in this country. Hearing the first chiff-chaff, but not all of them are here.
Absolutely, yeah. And I think it's very easy as well when you're starting out for people to kind of almost feel like they're all sounding the same. I think it's very easy for people that have been doing it a long time to be able to pick out the different calls, but as a beginner, it can be very challenging, very overwhelming, the idea of trying to pick out these different songs and know what you're listening to. And yeah, I think it's a great thing to try and do, but do try and tell people not to be disheartened that you're not going to be able to tell every single bird that's calling in your first season or two of doing it. It takes a long time.
Yeah, and the other thing I would say is that it's not all about identifying them either. I mean, sometimes it's just nice to come along and listen and just be sort of in the midst of it, and not worry about what species are singing where or why, and just actually just take time out to
Just
just
enjoy it.
pause.
Yeah, absolutely. I couldn't agree more. And I think that that's something that is often overlooked, in that you don't have to be able to identify birds by sight or song. Just to be out and enjoying them is enough. And over time, without even realizing it, you might also pick up a few things anyway. But it's about your own individual enjoyment, and if that is just being out and amongst it, listening to it, then that's a great thing and should be really celebrated.
Yeah, absolutely. I've already heard loads of things. And also, I don't like to dismiss the things that are really common that you hear all the time, like the crows, or rooks kind of clacking by overhead.
Absolutely.
And being on a watery reserve, you're also quite likely to hear the odd goose, and I think they count.
They certainly do. I think they all count, and I think they're all brilliant in their own way. And I think enjoying the more common birds is just as much fun. I mean, some of the common birds, such as the wren. What an incredible song! I could listen to that all day. I think just because it's a relatively common bird and you hear it all the time, shouldn't be overlooked at all. It's always a lovely thing to hear.
Yeah, I always think of them as little opera singers because they're such tiny little birds, and they've got such a big voice for the sort of a big, rich and round voice for such a tiny little bird. There's one singing right now.
Absolutely, that's one I trained earlier. It's
Yeah,
been very well behaved, that wren. Yeah.
yeah. And I always think a wren is quite easy to identify for beginners because once you've heard one, you've pretty much heard them all. Whereas there are some birds that are quite difficult because they change by individual.
Yeah.
But a wren is like a phrase.
It's reliable. Yeah.
Exactly.
It is.
It's a reliable wren.
Yeah, quite right. It's a great bird to learn, and another good one to learn the song of if that's what you're looking to do and come out and learn more bird song. I often point people towards learning the first three. Your wren, your robin, and your blackbird. Once you've kind of got those covered, it becomes a whole new world, because you can say, well, hang on a second, I know that's not one of those three, therefore it's something different, it's something interesting. What is it? And if you can pull those three apart, then you're off to a really good start.
Yeah.
So my name's Nathan Long. I am the Corporate Partnerships Manager for the Wildlife Trust BCM. That role entails stewarding our corporate members, trying to engage with as many local businesses within our 3 counties as we can, and trying to get our message and aims across to the many staff and other senior level members within these businesses to get them to support our work and hopefully share our aims and ambitions and join our movement.
Yeah, and there's lots of ways businesses can get involved, aren't there? From wild work days are one of my favourite to kind of hear about, where sort of business away days, right?
Absolutely, yeah. See, you can think of it as a team building day if you like. It's a great opportunity for organisations to come together, bringing teams or just individual members of staff to group together and get out and get stuck in, get involved and help with our habitat management work on our sites, to support the reserves that we're looking after, make a difference in the local community, and to do something good and give something back. Is Robin singing?
Yeah, I love the robin song. I'm trying to think of ways to describe them. I always think of a robin as really slidey.
It's nice. I can see that. Yeah,
slides between notes. There's no kind of. It's not gone.
Yeah.
It's got some distinct ones, but it's sort of.
I really struggle with describing birdsong to people because I feel like it's a very individual kind of feeling as to how it sounds to you. It's quite it's quite difficult to say this is exactly what it sounds like, because everyone's idea of what it might sound like is different. But it is good fun trying at the same time.
Yeah.
I do always find it very amusing when you read in the books about how the calls are supposed to sound, and they come up with all these very fun and descriptive noises and sounds that they're trying to piece together. But it's I think there's nothing like actually hearing it in the flesh yourself.
Yeah, absolutely. Because birds don't have a larynx; they have a syrinx. I happen to know from my dawn chorus walks, and that's why they can make such weird and kind of concurrent sounds, isn't it? So they have a very different physiology.
Very good. Yeah, absolutely.
I don't know if you can hear this on the podcast, but there is a very strident chiff-chaff singing, which I always think you long for it in early spring to hear the first chiff-chaff. And then by the time they get going, it's just, dude.
It's such a nice moment when you hear your first one in spring. It really is kind of a real warming of the heart moment to hear your first chiff chaff and know that spring is on its way. So it's a lovely moment and one that's really memorable. I look forward to it each year.
Yeah. And how would you describe a chiff chaff sound? Surely you can help describe that sort of sound.
Do you know what? I think I can. That one I can probably do. It's another great one for people that are looking to get into birdsong and learn a little bit about what birds are singing. And it's nice when birds do this because there's not very many of them that do it, but chiff chaff just really just sings its own name over and over and over. So hearing chiff chaff, chiff chaff.
It really does. Although I have to say, at Paxton Pits, there are a couple of willow warblers that start off with a chiff chaff.
Well, this is where it gets confusing, isn't it? And I've even heard chiff chaffs that are a little bit confused and go chaff chiff.
Oh my goodness!
So you know, it's a difficult one to get into at times, but it's good fun and it keeps it interesting.
Yeah. I think there was one the other day that was going chiff chiff chaff.
Yeah.
Chiff chiff chaff. Yeah, it's funny, isn't it, how your ear sort of picks out a word out of the sounds.
Yeah. I mean, I think a lot of learning birdsong and getting to grips with the birds calling is not necessarily memorising the exact call it makes, but actually getting to understand the pitch and the levels and the sound quality, because that way you know exactly what's calling, even when it's not doing the usual song it should be doing. A really good example is the great tit, which is one of the most confusing and difficult birds to identify by call, because it has over 40 different calls that it likes to throw out on random occasions and keep people on their toes. Even the most experienced and hardened birders will have spent many an hour peering into the back of bushes and trees, trying to figure out what rarity they've just discovered, only to find a great tit pop out the back and cause them some frustration, shall we say.
Which is kind of isn't what they tell you in the books, because obviously you do hear a lot of great tits once you've got your ear in, because they do that teacher
Absolutely,
which most people will probably be familiar with, even if they don't realise they are. It's sort of teacher, and that's kind of the classic great tit, isn't it? But
it is.
But yeah, the sub songs, the world of the sub songs. That's
a real headache. Yeah.
It is. That's the world of poetry to me. That is the world of the sub songs. You know, it's like almost like they're warming up, or they're kind of playing.
Yeah,
almost like they're playing.
Absolutely, and it's good fun. And like I say, once you kind of got your ear really in, and you can start to figure out things by the pitch and tone, you can start to go, well, it's not doing the usual call, but that does sound like X, Y, or Z. You know, and it can be very helpful. But again, that's a little bit further down the line, I would say, than coming out and just enjoying a bit of the song and listening to what's singing.
Yeah, so I can hear at the moment, there's lots of robins. I can also hear a song thrush in the distance.
That's right, yeah.
I always think I don't know what a song thrush sounds like, except they repeat themselves.
Well, another one that's very difficult to pin down in terms of writing down what a song thrush sounds like. Song thrushes are fantastic mimics and will often throw in other bird calls. I've heard them make all sorts of noises, including crows, tawny owls. I was doing the breeding bird survey at Brampton Wood yesterday morning, and I had a song thrush that was throwing out the calls of the great spotted woodpecker, which was very confusing, but luckily I had pinned down where it was and was watching it, and so could therefore know for sure that it wasn't the woodpecker and it was the song thrush making those noises.
Yeah, and
but again, another layer of fun for birdsong. That
there are quite a lot of mimics, aren't they?
Absolutely,
sort of mimic each other. Starlings are my favourite mimics, because they mimic they can mimic anything.
Yeah,
I think car alarms and farm machinery
and
and other birds. But yes, the song thrush, whatever it does say, it says it quite a few times usually. So it'll say it 3 to 5 times, I think, isn't it? Or 7 sometimes if you're
it says it particularly loudly, I find, as well. You know, it really does stand out from the crowd. The pitch and volume that the song thrush manages to achieve.
And stands at the top of a tree.
Absolutely.
Actually, where the birds are is also a way, if you want to identify them, to think about how that helps. So a wren has got such a big voice because it's so small that it hides. It doesn't want people to know where it is, so it sings from right in the middle of a bush, so you'll very rarely see a wren singing, I think. So it has to have a really loud voice to kind of get out of the bush. But a song thrush is loud and proud, right at the top of a tree.
It is indeed. You can hear it from such a long way away as well. It can be quite hard sometimes to find exactly where it is, but it's a fantastic song to listen to and a real favourite. I think it's one that people often find they're woken up by. It's another one that starts very early in the morning.
Right.
So it will be singing for quite a long time, which is, again, quite a nice one to listen to, because you get a long time to kind of get to grips with it, as opposed to some of these shorter periods of time.
Now then, I confess, having been on a lot of dawn chorus walks, I'm sort of at that level where I can pick out the basics. I think I would say that's where I'm at. Warblers, I'm okay with some of them, but I find the blackcap quite confusing with the garden warbler. I don't really know, because I know we do get garden warblers here sometimes, so I find those two a bit hard to distinguish. And also I think they sound a little bit like a robin to me as well, sometimes, not always.
Sure.
So do you have any tips about the blackcap? I think we've heard a few blackcaps this morning, if I'm right, but this is where I'm on shaky ground, you see.
we have indeed, and you're certainly not alone. I think it's very important to say that everybody struggles with the blackcap and the garden warbler. It's kind of an age-old tale of people getting their ear in early on in the season. Even again, the most experienced birders will take a week or so to kind of readjust when they're hearing them both coming back in. I mean, again, as kind of touched on earlier, a useful point to note is that the blackcap starts singing a lot earlier than the garden warbler.
In the day or in the year?
In the year. So if you're out listening to birdsong in kind of late March or early April, you're going to be listening to blackcaps. There's not going to be any garden warblers around.
Right.
So that's quite helpful to rule out garden warbler, because what you really want to be able to do is get really used to one of them, which is most often the blackcap, because it's more common and it's, as I say, sings a bit more than the garden warbler and earlier in the year. Once you're really comfortable with it, you can then start noticing the differences and say, actually, well, hang on a second, this isn't quite the same as the blackcap. Right. And that's, I would say, the best way to get to grips with any birdsong really is just really get to grips with the basics.
And hard, because they're not often, garden warblers aren't as common, are they? So you're not going to hear them as often, so it's hard to get your ear in.
It is. But once you are really familiar with the blackcap, it does become a little bit easier, and you can start to notice the differences. The garden warbler has slightly less scratchy, more melodic, kind of more tuneful notes. Also doesn't sing for as long periods of time, so shorter bursts, which can be helpful, but it's not necessarily to be relied on.
Sure.
Unfortunately, birds don't read the textbooks, and they kind of do their own thing a lot of the time, so it's definitely one to be taken with a pinch of salt, but can be helpful at times.
Yeah. Is that a blackcap that's singing right here?
Yeah,
am I right?
Yeah, absolutely. There's a couple of blackcaps singing at the moment. They're a fantastic bird song to listen to. Used to be heralded as nightingales in the north.
Oh, really?
Not finding nightingales up much further than the Midlands, further north in the UK. This is the best that people up there had to listen to, and it's a pretty amazing song, to be fair.
It's very quick. I feel like they go through their notes very quickly, like they're in a rush.
Absolutely. They're tripping over themselves trying to get it all out.
Yeah.
This is the garden warbler singing here, this one. So that's blackcap down there. See the bubbles in the note?
Yeah.
Far less scratchy.
And less rushed.
Yeah. But to my ear, it's far more melodic, slower, bubbly, just less scratchy, and slightly more drawn out.
Definitely. Yeah, but always in the background, and this we haven't mentioned yet, is the ubiquitous pigeon. Ubiquitous pigeon, that's the word, isn't it?
Absolutely.
Yeah, you can't have a dawn. You can't call it a dawn chorus without the what's the word? The tones of the drone, I should say.
Yeah, the drone. Drone is a good way. Yeah.
The wood pigeon or the collared dove. Either way, I love them. Don't get me wrong.
Oh,
I
absolutely.
do love them.
They've all got their place.
Well, there you go. Garden warbler compared to a blackcap. There you go. It's almost as if I knew. That happened exactly on cue.
There you go. So subconsciously, really, you had it nailed down. Just didn't give yourself enough credit. I think that's the problem there.
Yeah. There's things though that we hear a lot less of now. Like I remember going on my first dawn chorus work, and it wasn't here. To be fair, it was up north. I think in Newcastle somewhere, one of the parks in the city centre. They heard loads of chaffinches. Chaffinches were just everywhere. Chaffinch. Like every other song was a chaffinch.
Yeah, I think that's one of the things that I love about birding in general, and dawn choruses and everything that comes along with it, is that it's different everywhere you go. You know, it's it's not the same as what's on your patch or what you're used to. If you go to a neighbouring area or across the county even, or even across the country, you know, you're going to have a completely different suite of birds singing even at different times potentially, and keeps it interesting, and it makes it a lot of fun to be able to say, well, this is what I've become comfortable with and what I'm used to, but what's going on over here. And as you say, you can get some real nice surprises with birds that you might not hear very often being really common there. You know, it's a really exciting part of birding, I think.
It is. Is that what you love about it? That variety?
It's definitely part of it. It's just that it's always interesting. You're always learning. I think that's one of the big things. Is, you know, no matter how long you've been doing it, there's always going to be something to learn, something new to experience. And for me, that's just a fascinating and brilliant thing.
Yeah. So we're walking in Paxton Pits now along the River Great Ouse, which runs alongside. Lots of trains going by as well. And there's still quite a lot of the similar birds that we've been hearing. And there's a song thrush singing.
There is indeed, right at the top of this tree here, with the blossom on.
There he is.
I find the song thrush song a really fascinating one because it seems to string together a whole load of kind of different and random notes that is just chucked in, but somehow it works. It makes this fantastic melody.
It almost sounds like a conversation to me, like it's having a conversation with somebody and trying to really make a point.
Absolutely, it's great. And as it happens right now, this song thrush we're listening to, you can just about hear another song thrush in the distance that it's basically talking to, if you like, and you know, saying this is my area. You know, stay out of this one, and where's your area. I find that side of things fascinating as well when listening to birdsong, that, you know, we don't really know what they're actually communicating. It sounds like a lovely kind of melodic thing for us to listen to these beautiful notes coming from birds, but really what they're doing is shouting at each other that either stay away from me or come here and meet me. You know, it's,
yeah, wink, wink.
Yeah, exactly. It's a very amusing thing, and I think of everyone standing around the group listening to the lovely songs of the birds, and really the messages that they're sending out are quite different to what we're hearing.
Yes. Yeah. Not as many song thrushes around. I don't hear as many these days. I used to hear them a lot more. I was same with everything, I suppose. Same with chaffinches. I did used to hear more of them around here, and there's not as many around.
Yeah, song thrushes are one of the birds that have been in mass decline in recent years, sadly. And as you say, there's far fewer of them around now than there used to be. Similar also for chaffinches.
One of the reasons our nature reserves are so important. I must say, Paxton Pits, although it isn't one of our nature reserves, it's actually run by Huntingdonshire District Council, and with the help of the Friends of Paxton Pits. But we have an education centre here, our Paxton Pits Education Centre, which has a lot of amazing events for kids of all ages and schools and things in the area. But it's one of the reasons nature reserves are just so important, you know, to sort of refuges for these.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah, and sites like this, even though they're not ours, are equally as important. And the fact that Debbie at the Education Centre does such an amazing job of engaging with the local community and getting those messages out there is fantastic. And it's quite nice, I think, to see places like this coming together and working together, all for the same aims and ambitions. You know, we're all trying to achieve the same thing. You know, giving spaces to nature and getting people to engage with it. So anyone that wants to try and do that is doing something right in my book, really.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's just so important that we build a network of things across the country, isn't it? Across the countryside, for creatures to have space as much as we do. But yeah, songfish, it's amazing. Lots of wrens as well. I think they're such a small bird and it's sort of quite elusive. You don't see them as often as you hear them, but once you get your ear into what they sound like, you'll realise just how many wrens there actually are around.
Definitely.
The other thing I find slightly tricky is, of course, alarm calls.
Sure.
Which, of different birds, I guess they're designed to sound similar so that they alert everybody, so that they're not kind of sort of species specific, are they, in the same way as a song is?
Absolutely, yeah. I think that's, again, one of the fascinating parts. It's not just the lovely songs that we hear, but birds have a range of noises that they make, mainly three main noises. So you have the bird song, the bird call, and then the bird alarm call. So those are the main three that most birds have. What I love about that, though, is it's not necessarily, doesn't need to be a lovely melodic sound or a song that even comes from bird's mouth. Some of those calls are actually what's known as a mechanics noise, so a noise that's created by the bird's movements and not by the mouth. So, for example, the call of the wood pigeon is actually the wing clap. So when it flies away, wood pigeon claps its wings together, and that noise is known as the wood pigeon call.
Right, so it does it on purpose. It's not a sort of...
Absolutely, yeah. So that's... But there are other birds in different parts of the world that have some amazing mechanical noises where they'll vibrate their feathers together and create, kind of whirring noises and other things, and those are listed as the bird's call, as opposed to the song that we listen to when it comes out of the bird's mouth.
Here's a little aside, just for you. One reason our 3 counties are a special place for wildlife. BCN Beauties.
Hello, my name is Gwen Hitchcock and I'm Senior Monitoring and Research Officer here at the Wildlife Trust for Beds, County North Hants. The chalk-hill blue butterfly, as the name suggests, thrives on chalk grasslands across southern England. Over the summer months, they can be seen flitting about on reserves such as Tottenham and Pegston Hills in Bedfordshire and at Fleam Dyke in Cambridgeshire. Chalk-hill blues are actually the UK's second largest blue butterfly, only beaten in size by the rare large blue, which is not found on our patch unfortunately. The male chalk-hill blues are a stunning pale silvery blue, which is a very distinctive colour different to our other blue butterflies, whilst the females are a brown colour with just a hint of blue around their body. Their caterpillars feed exclusively on horseshoe vetch, a chalk grassland plant, and the caterpillars are, interestingly, found in association with ants, which protect their caterpillars in return for a sugary substance that they produce. Being very much a warmth-loving species, the adults are on the wing over the height of summer, from mid-July through to early September, and they tend to favour south-facing banks. But the heat waves that are caused by climate change can cause problems even for sun-loving species such as these. However, we are working on a solution. So we teamed up with researchers from the University of Cambridge, and with funding from the Cambridge Conservation Initiative and the People's Postcode Lottery, we built 2, soon to be 3, sets of experimental butterfly banks. These have been shaped like a capital letter E, so that they provide a variety of different aspects and shelter for wildlife. And already we're seeing positive results. In the heatwave a couple of years back, the shade provided on the northern side of the banks allowed butterflies and other invertebrates to hide from the most extreme temperatures. The results of this research will help us, and other land managers, to buffer species from the effects of climate change, working at a local scale.
Dunnock singing here in the bush.
Yes. Again, Dunnock, one of those elusive birds that people don't really know about. I feel like about the same size as a robin, aren't they? Like a robin with a grey chest, basically, instead of a red chest.
Absolutely.
They're quite common,
They're a particularly common garden bird, but do often get overlooked. The old world name for them is hedge sparrow, which I think is quite a good name in the sense that they often get confused for sparrows, but they are often found kind of creeping around under the hedges, under hedgerows.
Yeah.
They're a little bit skulky. I think the easiest thing to describe when looking at a dunnock is its posture. So another thing that might be overlooked when thinking about trying to identify birds, but dunnock is almost always bent forward, kind of almost parallel to the ground when it's hopping around, whereas something like a robin, for example, is always upright. And those kind of signs really help to form the pieces of the puzzle that go towards identifying the species you're looking at. So another useful kind of tip I would say to be able to tell what you might be looking at if it's of interest to you to identify things.
Yeah, I feel like I should have got my ear in. That sounded like a black cap to me, but is that right?
Yes, black cap singing here, yeah. And I think there's garden warbler in the background here as well.
Is that a sedge warbler in the background as well, or is that part of the garden warbler song?
It's part of the garden warbler.
Is it?
Yeah.
I didn't know there was a bit of overlap there.
Yeah, there's overlap with a lot of the warblers in general.
Yeah.
But, I mean, sedge and reed warbler are often a real challenge for people.
Oh, I hope we hear one. I love telling the difference between them. I think of a reed warbler as being at a rave.
That's a great way of
The
describing
rhythm,
it.
sort of do 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 ba 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 do do. Whereas a sedge warbler is like at the same rave but much later at night. Whereas sort of lost it a bit and it's just going do 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 do.
I always think of sedge warbler as having a bit more jazz to it. It's a bit more excitement, right? A bit more of the blues involved.
Yeah. I'll tell you what, we've just stopped here looking at all of these trees, listening to the garden warblers, and it always strikes me when you're walking straight through somewhere, you very rarely see birds. You know what I mean? Like you can hear them, but you don't really see them.
Absolutely.
But, I mean, we're sitting here, we're chatting, we're not standing here, we're not being super quiet. I'm wearing bright yellow coats, so I'm not exactly blending into the background. But all it takes is just be still for a few minutes, and all of a sudden, all the birds start flitting around again. It's almost like they sort of pause as people walk past.
Absolutely.
And then they're like, oh, okay, there's no movement, and they just sort of emerge.
Yeah, I think it's, again, one of the biggest bits of advice you can give to anyone starting out is just to be still and take a few moments in different places and just watch. And as you say, the birds kind of almost come out and show themselves and make themselves known. I mean, they're there while we're walking past. It's just harder to see them, but it does feel like they're almost coming out to investigate when you do just stop for a moment and take it all in.
But also just a little bit of tree cover here because we've been walking kind of slightly open in packs and pits. There's sort of a mixture of areas. We've been sort of in more grassy areas really along the river, but all of a sudden we're sort of in a bit more tree cover. And
that change in habitat makes a big difference. As soon as you kind of come across a different area, you get a whole nother suite of birds, and I think that's really good fun to be able to mix it up and go from a wetland straight into a woodland.
And it doesn't have to be a nature reserve. I mean, people can do this in their own local park or...
Absolutely not. That's really at the heart of it, why I like birds so much and why I find it such a fascinating hobby, because you can do it anywhere. You know, it doesn't matter where you are, whether you're standing on a train platform waiting for a train, there will be birds around you. You might not think it, but if you look up, if you look around, there will be some birds.
So Neatt's train station is great for goldfinches, if anyone's...
Absolutely. Yeah. So I think that, you know, a hobby that you can do anywhere in any moment, you know, is just a brilliant thing.
And the dawn chorus, you know, it is a brutal ask to get asked to get up before dawn, which is why we haven't done it today. Partly because I don't have a parabolic microphone, so there wouldn't be much kind of gain for the podcast listeners either, really. But obviously early morning is best. But if you really can't even face, you know, getting outside, even if you just open your window, you know, wake up and open your bedroom window and just see what you can hear drifting in.
It's worth saying as well that while the dawn chorus is definitely the time when birds are most active and there's most birdsong going, there is another kind of evening chorus, if you like, you know, in the evening just before dusk. And if you'd like a bit more of a soft dawn chorus, going out in the evening is a lot more palatable, I would say, for most, but still a great time to listen to birdsong. So yeah, it's worth giving that a go.
Something creeping on the tree trunks up there. It's flitting about. Might have been a tree creeper, I suppose. It didn't look big enough to be a woodpecker.
Yeah, most likely be a tree creeper if it's on the trunk. Oh yeah, tree creeper here in front of us now on this trunk. Just going on the right hand side, making its way up. Brilliant.
Do they have a song? Do they join in the dawn chorus?
They do have a song. It's very hard to pick up because it's very high pitched. So it's often overlooked. It's a kind of almost circular song that rises, but it's very, very high pitched. So yeah, not an easy one, and one that I think most people never quite get to grips with.
It is hard to hear past the big singers.
Oh, definitely.
You know, when you've got song, because I find it hard to hear like Goldcrest songs and things like that. I know they do sing. And one thing I should say is the Merlin Bird app is excellent. I was going to come on to that, isn't it? Yeah,
absolutely.
Because it does help, and quite often you're looking at that, you'll sort of suddenly see that there's a bird there that you just didn't hear, and you just had no idea it was there. And obviously it's not 100% reliable, so sometimes it's going to pick up things that aren't there.
Absolutely.
But often I think it's just that you don't, amidst the kind of cacophony of the chiff-chaffs and the robins and the blackbirds.
I think that it's a if you are looking to get into birding with a sense of identifying things, it's a real challenge, because a lot of the time you don't have that positive reinforcement of, yes, that was the correct identification, or no, I got it wrong for X, Y, Z reason. How do I get it right next time? But with something like the Merlin Bird ID app, it's really helpful in saying, well, I think I can hear this. What does Merlin say? It says the same thing. Well, in that case, there's a good chance I've got it right. And that's really helpful for people that are trying to learn, because I do see it as such a massive challenge for people if they've not done it before. It's a big hill to climb to suddenly get to grips with all these songs and calls and even visible identification. So to have something like that can help people is just fantastic. And it's come on leaps and bounds in the last years as well. And as you say, while it's not completely reliable, it gives you a really good starting point, and a great tool to use to learn. I often advise people to sit down in an area and put the app on, but put it facing down so you can't see it. Listen to what you think you can hear and say, right, I think I can hear these birds. Turn the phone over and see what it says. See if it matches what you thought. You can do that over and over and over, and it's great fun. If you're trying to learn, it's a really good way of doing things.
Yeah, and it's free, I think, isn't it?
It is, yeah. So it's free app. Yeah.
And it records them, so you can even see the what's the word?
Sonograms. Yeah.
Of the song as well, which I think it's actually quite good for people, even if you're losing your hearing in some way,
or
if you suffer from any kind of hearing loss, because you can also learn to identify them from the sonogram, because each sonogram is individual as well. So it's a visual ID for something that's audible, which I think is also really good.
It is, and if nothing else, it's just fascinating to see. It's really exciting to have a whole other spectrum of interest for birds, like you say, to be able to read the sonograms and things.
Yeah, so we're recording this at the sort of end of April, and in celebration of International Dawn Chorus Day, which is coming up just over a week's time. There's lots of ways. Even if you want to get a little bit more involved, and you sort of want to get a good start, I really do recommend a dawn chorus walk. We've got lots on the Wildlife Trust website, and some early morning walks as well. Not always dawn, because it can be quite hard to get up for 5 a.m. to get somewhere. We do understand, but there's still lots to be heard a bit later in the morning as well. So I think, do check the website at wildlifebcn.org/events, and you'll see there's quite a few around that you could join in with. But lots of other organisations do them too at this time of year because of International Dawn Chorus Day. So they are one of my favourite ways. It's the only way I've got my ear in. You really do have to practice, and it's good to have somebody, like you say, that positive affirmation. It counts so much towards actually learning, because it's easy to go, I think that's a this and that's a this. If no one tells you you're right or wrong, it's really hard to learn.
It is. It's really challenging. That's blue tip calling.
Is that what that is?
Yeah.
You see, that is one of those sounds. I don't know about anyone else. You hear it all the time. I hear that. It's just such a kind of, that to me is just the epitome of walking along a path with trees on it. That's that's what that noise is. I don't think I knew that was a blue tip call. Interesting. I heard a Chetty's warbler the other day, and it was the first one I'd heard of the year, because I'm not a regular birder, so I'm sure they've been around longer than that so far. But it was the first one I'd heard, and it just reminded me how much they just really shout at you.
Yeah.
I was like, all right.
It is an explosive sound, I think is really the best way of describing it. It does take you by surprise at times.
Yes, the other thing I would say is, if you want a bit more in-depth on particular species, we actually have wildlife training workshops as well through the year that do that. So the reason I know my warblers is because I've been on a warbler identification course that the Trust runs, and they're really fantastic because they're run by local experts, but they're they're so friendly, and you meet a bunch of people who kind of have the same interest, and yes, they give you a really good practical experience. So that one was at the Great Fen that I went to, where you basically heard all of the warblers that you should hear. We heard in one day, and it was just such a great way to learn them.
The training workshops are a real, just a fantastic offering that the Trust do, and a great opportunity to be able to get out and learn about any kind of area of nature that you're interested in. There's such a wide offering, as you say, warbler identification course. I mean, I think everybody could get something out of going on one of those. They're always challenging, and a great opportunity to learn, really.
And do you get much chance to do birding with corporates?
Not really, no. Sadly, as much fun as that would be, most corporates tend to not have a huge amount of knowledge, or dare I even say interest, a lot of the time in nature, and it really is often just that first step of getting people outside and away from their desks.
Yeah.
So we tend to have more of a kind of a generalist approach of just to enjoy being outside, being in the green spaces, and learning a little bit of the general fauna and flora of what's around on some of our sites. There's your Chetty's warbler.
Yeah, just heard it in the distance, so it didn't alarm me quite as much as it normally would.
Yeah, at a safe distance, that one was.
Yeah.
Yeah, so we tend to keep it a little bit more generalist, but I do like the idea in the future of getting corporates that are more interested in getting a deeper understanding or a better grip of a particular field. And if that was to be getting out and enjoying some birdsong or things like that, then that would be brilliant. But we do have some brilliant corporate events that we run through the year. There's one coming up in a couple of weeks in the middle of May at our exciting new site, Strawberry Hill, where we go out for, again, similar to this, not quite dawn chorus. There's quite a big ask to drag people out for 5 a.m, but later in the morning around 8 o'clock, and take people on a walk through the scrubland there to listen to the nightingales and the other songbirds. And that's been a really, really joyful event to see people that have never heard nightingale before come out and enjoy that and experience the wonder of birdsong, really. And
yeah, and Strawberry Hill, I mean, it's an amazing place to do that, because it's just a rewilded farm, essentially, in Bedfordshire, and it's a huge site. And there's a podcast where we do a guided walk around it with Chantal, so if you're listening to this, do go and listen back if you haven't already heard it. But yes, that was recorded in autumn, so it wasn't kind of at the peak of birdsong by any means, but it's just abundant, isn't it?
Yeah, it is. It's one of the only places I've ever stood where I can hear a turtle dove, a cuckoo, and a nightingale all at the same time, which I think is pretty spectacular, really. Especially in this day and when it's much harder to hear any one of those three, let alone all three together, sadly.
Yeah, it is an amazing site, and I say it's not fully open to the public as a nature reserve yet. We're still working on how we're going to manage that and how we're going to do it, but there are some public paths that go through. So do check our website if you're inclined to go and visit. There are some public rights of way which are open.
Yeah. So that's an interesting bird call on your right there. Don't know if you know that one.
This is the thing, it's really hard to...
This is what I say about starting at the beginning of the year. It makes it a lot easier because you get overwhelmed with stuff otherwise. But it was a lesser white-throat calling.
No, that was included in our warbler ID, but because I don't see them very often, my ear is not practiced on that at all.
Of course, understandable. But
yeah,
that's the first one I've heard this year, so it's really nice one to pick back up. I think it might have flown off to the left. Yeah, it's now singing down there.
I just saw it. Yeah.
You also hear a greenfinch in the background, which is a fun song.
What's the greenfinch song? I know it's call. Is it that sort of zzz sound?
Yeah, so that nasally call, the kind of wheeze. I always call it a wheeze.
Yeah.
Like it's struggling, but it's quite a nice kind of jingly kind of few notes. You have to see if I can get a bit closer to listen to it.
Yeah, that wheeze is, to me, I think because of where I grew up, the epitome of summer hedges, summer hedgerows in the countryside. Nice. And I didn't know what it was, and then I once I started learning birds, I was like, oh, it's a greenfinch that's summer. To me,
I love that. Yeah. Well, I think that's that's something I also tend to recommend to people, is not to get too bogged down in knowing the identification of what you listen to, but to even give it your own names, or just, oh, that's the, the I don't know, the repetitive step song, or whatever you need to name it, to give it your own
That
name.
sounds to me like the willow warbler.
Yeah, exactly. That's what I was
what
going to
you were
think. Yeah, it was.
describing?
Yeah,
That's
exactly.
amazing.
But someone might hear that often and have no idea what a willow warbler is, but no, I know that song. I can recognise that individual. I can recognise that call, and it's very easy after you've got that to go, oh well, I just transfer that name I've made up to the species name or whatever. So I think you're right. A lot of people will have certain birds they might not know the name of, but will be very familiar with the song, and it's a nice way of starting to say, well, at least I know that one.
Is that an alarm call going on?
It is, the clicking. Yeah, it sounds like the alarm call from a wren, I think.
That makes sense, because it's right in the middle of a very dense looking bit of bramble, which is exactly where a wren would hide, isn't it? I wonder what it is. Whenever I hear bird alarm calls, I always think, oh, I wonder what it is.
Yeah.
A weasel or a cat or just another bird or something. I don't know. Like a squeaky sound.
Yeah.
That just a...
That sounds like potentially interaction between like a female and a male, or even can sometimes be potentially from young birds, but I think it's a little bit early at the moment for that.
Amazing. Once you get your ear in, the layers of sound that are actually there sort of almost match the layers of habitat, all those kind of almost intimate noises, the sort of quieter, almost like chatting between them is happening in the kind of lower stories of where it's kind of more covered, and then all these chiff-chaffs and the birds singing are sort of up high, and the broadcasting.
It's the lesser white throat again.
Okay, I did hear it that time.
Yeah.
Do you know,
quite close to us now.
Almost sounds like a yellowhammer.
Yes, it does.
Sort of like
without the cheese at the end.
Yeah, just a little bit of bread. I'm going to remember that now, you see.
No,
that's how I bed them in. Tell stories to myself about them,
Yep.
Just like the willow warbler to me is falling down the stairs.
Yep.
That's how I remember it.
It's a good way of doing it. There he is.
Oh yeah, I see him right there. There you go. I haven't heard a lesser whitethroat for ages. I suppose that's the nature of spring though, isn't it? You hear loads of things you haven't heard for ages. Is that a garden warbler?
Yeah.
Yes! Got my ear in. Oh, I'm so excited about that. Honestly, that's plagued me for a long time, telling the difference.
It plagues a lot of people, but it's
and I'm sure it'll plague me again.
I was about to say that, yeah. Wait till you get to next year again, you go, oh, which way is it around? Yes.
Or just tomorrow.
Yeah.
Yes, there used to be more nightingales down this end of the reserve, didn't there? When I first moved to Little Paxton, my house is quite close to Paxton Pits, and I used to hear them from my bedroom window.
Amazing.
Because there's a little bit of scrub. It's not actually technically part of the reserve, but it's just outside.
Yeah.
And yeah, they used to sing there at night, and used to have my windows open in the spring just to listen to them when I was in bed.
Oh, incredible. I could only dream of something like that. It would be pretty special.
Doesn't happen anymore, to say.
Well, sadly, from my understanding, as is often the case, the scrub that was ideal for them at one point is just kind of got a little bit too dense and thick, and it's kind of going through that successional change.
Yeah.
And it's now not quite the right habitat in the lower parts of the reserve now, but where it was younger and not quite suitable at the time in the northern sections is now in a more suitable position.
Yeah.
And it's kind of gone through that development, and so is now a perfect habitat in that side. So while it may feel like they've been lost from this part of the reserve, they've just shifted slightly as they do.
Yeah, absolutely.
And they've moved up to the northern sections.
And that, I guess that's the nature of being a nightingale. I think people are always surprised to, I know I was surprised to hear about where they actually nest. Because you think of birds nesting in trees up high, a nest in a tree is that's your standard image, but nightingales nest really low to the ground, don't they?
Yeah, and in the dense scrub and things, and out of the way. And I think that's often a common misconception. There's quite a lot of birds that actually nest very low to the ground, in small bits of bramble on the sides of paths and things like that. And it's you can understand why things like dogs and other disturbance things can make such an impact on nesting birds.
Yeah, absolutely.
Whereas a lot of people think, oh, how's it going to make an impact at the top of the tree?
Yes.
You know, it's
yeah. Yeah, absolutely. And so all it takes is a little bit of that cover to go, and all of a sudden it's not appropriate anymore, you know, because obviously you nest low to the ground and you are susceptible to predators like foxes or weasels or badgers or all kinds of things that will kind of come and eat your eggs.
Yeah.
So you have to have that cover of brambles and a sort of a thicket. So it only takes a little bit of that to grow naturally, which it does. You know, the thicket turns into trees, doesn't it?
Yep.
But there's also lots of man-made reasons that might disappear too. But you know, scrub does grow, so it's only a transient.
Exactly that.
Habitat.
Transient's the perfect word, and I think the majority of habitats are like that and are always changing, and that's the natural cycle of things. And the birds are okay with that, but a lot of the time we're very keen to cling on to some of these habitats and keep it in pristine condition, and which we feel we need to because we have so little of them, you know. And
that's the thing.
That's the thing. You know, if we had larger areas, then it wouldn't be an issue for these habitats to change and go through the successional movements they would usually do. But you know, because we have limited amounts, we are keen to try and cling on to the habitats that we have and that we feel are important, because if we don't, then they'll be lost to us.
Yeah, absolutely. It's important to have different ages of things going on.
Absolutely.
Where you've got the space, but it does take space to do that, to make it useful.
Yeah.
You know, to have young trees and old trees and everything in between.
Exactly.
I do think it's funny when the chiff-chaffs arrive, because all then you hear is chiff-chaffs everywhere. Longing to hear your first one, and then they just they really go on.
They certainly do. Yeah, it's a funny one, isn't it? Like you say, it's something you really long for and wait for, and then suddenly they're everywhere and you can't get rid of them.
I just heard my first great tit. Maybe I just haven't had my ears tuned in, but of all the birds that we've heard today, I haven't actually heard any great tits.
I haven't heard any doing their standard teacher. A few little cheeps here and there, but yeah, that's the first kind of song we've heard. Yes. I like to think of that one as someone desperately trying to pump up an inflatable mattress. So the kind of the squeaking going over and over and over.
Yes.
It's a good one for beginners who might not get the words of teacher. As I say, everyone hears things differently.
Absolutely.
I've had certain people go, oh, I don't hear that at all. But as soon as you mime someone trying to pump up an inflatable mattress, they go, oh yeah, okay, and that seems to really stick. So I like that one.
Yeah, this is one of the things I do love about listening to birds with other people and just hearing their descriptions of things, because it does just whatever helps you remember, if that's what you want to do.
Exactly.
You know, it's kind of
it's a very individual thing to do, and you know, it doesn't need to be done the same way as anybody. If you've got your own way of memorizing things and it works for you, then keep doing that. You know, it's such a fun thing to be able to do it in your own way and to have your own style on things. And if you enjoy it, then that's the main thing. It doesn't even matter if you're not necessarily able to tell what things are or remember them, but if you're having fun with it, then keep doing it.
Yeah. Same goes for all of enjoying nature. I would say, not just birds, isn't it?
Absolutely. I don't know if it picked up. There was a moorhen calling on the river just then. They
all count. That's the thing I always think about. You know, doing it's definitely not dawn, but an early morning walk. You know, it doesn't have to just be your warblers and your great tits.
Absolutely. If anything, I think there can be a lot of fun gained from hearing things that we see a lot but don't necessarily hear.
Yes.
And sometimes it can really surprise people, some of the noises that come out of these birds that you're used to seeing, things like a moorhen or maybe even a swan or a pigeon or whatever it might be. But to be able to link together the sounds of what the noise it's making and the sight of what it looks like, it's an amazing way of connecting us with nature. I find it feel very grounded when I'm walking down a street and I'm not out birding, I'm just maybe walking to the car or out with friends, and I can hear a sound that I immediately know connects me to a certain habitat, a certain area, a certain species, and I feel very grounded by that, and it brings me a lot of solace and joy to always be able to feel connected to nature through the sounds and songs of birds.
Yeah. So yeah, thank you very much for joining me on this walk around Paxton Pits. It's been a pleasure to listen to the early morning chorus with you. I won't call it a dawn chorus. We're well beyond dawn, really, aren't we?
Not quite dawn chorus.
Yeah, not quite dawn chorus, but yeah, it's been really interesting hearing all the birds and helping me get my ear in with blackcaps and garden warblers. I hope it inspires other people to give it a go, because it really is just practice. And
exactly what I was going to say. Yeah. Even if just a handful of people decide that actually they're going to go out and listen to the birds a little bit more, then I'd be thrilled. It's a brilliant pastime to us to do, and something that can bring you real pleasure and joy if you start to get to grips with them, and even just enjoying the calls and sounds. It's a really wonderful thing. So thanks for inviting me out.
Yeah, thank you very much. Huge thanks to Nathan for being my guide around the birdsong of Paxton Pits. Though we didn't have any expert birdsong recording kit, I hope you got a sense of the surroundings and that it felt even a little bit as uplifting as it did in person. Getting out and about in spring and just taking the time to really listen to the birdsong that pipes from the bushes is a great way to connect with the nature that's all around us. Whether you sign up for a guided walk at one of our own nature reserves, do visit wildlifebcn.org/events to find an event near you, or just open your window wide one early morning, or anything in between. Now is the very best time of year to get the full earful. And don't get too hung up on identifying them if that isn't your thing. It's enough just to tune in and enjoy. If you do want some pointers, visit wildlifebcn.org/podcast to find some links to resources that might be helpful. If you're not already, becoming a member of the Wildlife Trust BCN is a great way to support your local wildlife. And perhaps you could let your HR department or sustainability manager at your workplace know that they can get involved as an organisation too. You can find out more about all the ways you can support our work on our website at wildlifebcn.org/support. Every member really does make a difference. A huge thank you to James Williams and Jared Wentwick for the podcast music. And finally, do like and subscribe wherever you get your podcasts and listen to some of our previous episodes of In Conservation. You can join me on a car park wildlife safari, a guided walk around Strawberry Hill, or even come behind the scenes at our historic beaver release at the Nen Wetlands. Let us know what you think by getting in touch on social media at WildlifeBCN or by dropping us a line from the website. But for now, cheerio!